us tonight because he's too busy doing other things, driving at the moment, I believe. So you're stuck with the B team, I'm afraid, the new guys. So hopefully we've organised it good enough for you guys, and we've got decent turnout, which is nice. Always good to see. So without further ado, I'll pass it over.
Thank you. Hi guys, welcome to Just Eat. First of all, fire exits are on the right. Toilets are behind the lift when you came in. Pizzas on the left, drinks on the right. That's it, that's Just Eat. So yeah, hope you all got the title. So about me, so obviously I don't know if all of you know kind of about me. I was at the Jamp London Roadshow a few months back. Yeah, been in IT for about 7 years, CCA, administered Jamp over to companies. Contact details if you want to get in touch. So when we started looking at, so when I joined, we used to use Centrify. And that was back in January 2015. We had about 150 Macs registered, which is truly about 160. So they were all bound to the domain, like local mobile accounts with Centrify. I joined. And then from June to July, we did some requirements gathering, kind of determine how the processes worked here, how kind of the support technicians built the devices, and how long it took them. It was all manual processes at the time, so manual bind, manual software installs, etc., etc. Then we did a proof of concept trial with Casper, which we got via Jamp software. And then from August to September, we kind of agreed or thought Casper was the right tool for us. And we submitted our business case to the head of technology at the time, and we waited. And then November of last 2015, our business case was approved, and we purchased Casper. We booked our jumpstart back in January, so our 2 days, which was actually 1 day because we had a fire drill and we lost a day, but and we configured Casper Suite, so kind of all your basic stuff's on the jumpstart, firewall, encryption, policies, and setting up all your distribution points and stuff like that. And yeah, we kind of completed around Jan-Feb our jumpstart. By then, by February, kind of mid-March, we built about 180 policies in Casper just to automate the imaging of Mac. So we got the Mac build from about 3 hours to kind of 14, 15 minutes. So big win there, saving time. And then by kind of the end of March, we put local distribution points in 7 locations over about 6 countries. And obviously, since then, we've kind of moved a little bit more. So we've got about another 2 more in 2 different countries. And then we rolled out to about 330 Macs by the end of March as well. So March to the end of the year, we kind of had a task to migrate all of our existing Centrify machines to Casper. We wrote a script. Lewis wrote a script, the man back there. He didn't want me to name and shame him, but he has. Which kind of took the user's data, changed the permissions of the user's profile, made it to our local account, put Casper on, and it all worked, didn't it? So by now, end of the year, we've got about roughly 400 devices on our Casper. So from where we were a year ago to where we are now, it's quite a steep increase. So what we plan to do in the future, so we started looking at our requirements to merge our existing Apple DEP and our VPP into Casper. So the theory behind it is we will end up doing a zero-touch deployment of our devices. So purely from the vendor straight to the user. And in coinciding with that, we'll kind of investigating whether we do ADFS single sign-on. We use MFA, Azure MFA as well. So it's just, we either do it for the JSS and the the Casper Suite self-service application. Just makes sense. And then, like I said, in the future, we'll investigate whether we go full zero-touch deployment of our devices. So, what have we done that's unique? Simple one, still with pride. So I got this from actually the Jumpstart, and I just modified it a bit. It's basically a self-service policy which runs, and the technician at the time after building the machine will get an asset tag policy. So we'll assign an asset tag with a label. They click on the policy, gives them a nice little pop-up box and put it in, and it updates on the inventory on Casper. We like our brand, so we kind of did custom login branding. We took over obviously the login hook, and this is what everyone sees when they log into their Mac. We did a custom security acceptance box. So when we were with Centrify, we had a small, mundane, just text one. We thought, let's jazz it up a bit. So we kind of did that. It completely focuses on our brand. It was run past security. Yeah, and you can find the instructions on the Apple website. Another one we've done is we kind of have a lot of developers here who kind of use both OSs. So the second of the OS is obviously a Windows machine. So we kind of use parallels a lot. So it was quite long having to build a Mac and then just grab an ISO and let Windows build. So we managed to capture a whole Windows built image and automated it by self-service. We still retain control of the licensing, so the end user still has to contact us to license the product and to join it to the domain. But the core part of the OS and the virtual machine was built for them. All they had to do was run that, and it would install it on their machine. One thing that we've done very recently, we've utilized the JSS API, and we've got a real-time dashboard of kind of stuff that we want to see from our Casper Suite. The dashboard uses a open source framework, the dashing framework, which displays kind of the information in kind of nice viewing for whoever you want to view it for. And it just allows us to kind of see our estate in a quick eye-shot level overview. For example, if there's no devices checked in the last 90 days, if that is one, it will go red. So obviously we need to kind of pay attention to those devices. So it's a quick way of us kind of identifying what in our estate needs attention. And obviously we can build up on this. This was really very early. So yeah, it's working well. And obviously we've got a licensing account. So if it ever does get low, then we can obviously be proactive and order more. So the main question that everyone asks, to bind or not to bind? So I don't know if you guys have been following, but Nomad, obviously written by Joel, who I met at their last Jamf London Roadshow. Ben actually introduced me to Joel. And since then, we've been testing the first beta to kind of where it is now. So for those of you who don't know, Nomad is kind of a menu bar application. That's kind of what it looks like. And it provides the functionality of being bound without actually having been bound to the domain. It's kind of like a third-party tool which matches Apple Enterprise Connect. So yes, it might not be available to you in this country. This is potentially a good solution. So since we've done some initial testing, we've rolled it out to a small number of pilot users. So far, it's been successful. We've kind of coincided it with some of the new MacBook releases as well. There haven't been much issues. It's been keeping accounts in sync, which has been kind of what we want. So local accounts, so no slow logins with mobile accounts and etc. And it's been keeping the passwords in sync. So it's a really good tool. So if you haven't seen it, I'd check that out. We created a launch agent and the launch daemons before they were created by Joel, but now they're there. You can grab the code. It's on the Slack channel as well. And Ben was here. I do want to have a shot at Ben to say we're going to replace AD Passmon, but he's not here. So not funny. So in answer to your question, to bind or not to bind, doesn't really matter. We kind of have ours bound. and use Nomad on top. It doesn't really matter. You get, yeah, same benefits if you're bound or not bound. That's it. That's me. If you're attending MacAD UK, I'll see you then.
Do this is yeah, exactly. So if you can't hear at any point, please say. I shall, or if it's too much, I shall try and come down. Okay, I'm a little bit out of practice. Long time lurker, first time speaker, so please be gentle on me. Really, actually, it's quite interesting coming in to speak on what I'm coming to speak to you about, which you have no idea what I'm coming to speak to you about, because that makes no sense. But it's going to work as a wonderful sort of contrast and compare piece, actually, I think. Because I'm going to be here talking about my very recent journey in my career in IT and what I'm doing at the moment and where I've just moved to 3 months ago. I've got a little bit more confidence about talking about that because I only signed off the sort of paperwork to say I was out of probation 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm now starting to feel like I've got my feet on the ground. But really, that's kind of what I'm here to talk about, because I've entered into a situation with my now job, which is probably quite at the other end of the scale, sort of on the corporate. We've got some nice funky branding going on over there, and I'm in some quite, if I was honest, quite a stuffy place. And it takes all sorts to make the world go round. And so I think this will be a little bit of an interesting sort of contrast piece. Okay, so you guys might not know me. Those that do know me know I have a sort of a bit of a tendency to be, I don't know, a sports Billy, if you're old enough to know the reference. So what is with the lycra? Well, basically on any given day, sort of 9 times out of 10, most people will find me either doing something like this, or like this, or like this. Okay, I do a lot of triathlon stuff. I love my sport, and trying to balance it with actually keeping a full-time job is tough sometimes. And in part, that's why I've ended up in the job that I've got at the moment. Everything was going awesome, you know. I've started to mature a little. I was feeling comfortable with where I was. The grey hairs had started to come through on the beard. I thought, you know what, I've got this down. I know what I'm doing. And then this happened not so long ago. And in fact, it was about 8 weeks ago. So if I look ever so slightly more haggard at the moment, that's the reason. So I have been quite busy. Very difficult trying to keep both a full-time job and trying to do some training, and actually finding some time this week to put a presentation together. So most of the presentation got done this afternoon. This is the first run through. So we'll keep it all crossed. We'll keep it all crossed. Okay, so the first quote up here, actually on a friend's timeline, James from Data Jar, who now works for MacMule. I saw this quote come out, and it suddenly reminded me that the last time I was actually talking to a group of my peers was in the same year that the iPhone was released. And in fact, I was on faculty over in Macworld where the iPhone was released. And I was in that keynote about 6 rows back, as awesome as that was. And I was probably the most unlucky person on faculty that year because I was doing a session on 2-factor authentication. And boy, that's a tough job to make that one light, I can tell you. I used to work for a company which provided the VPN solution for Apple as the global corporate. And every Apple employee at the time walked around, if they were anybody that needed external access to the network, and walked around with one of our little fobs, which provided the numbers. Now, it wasn't the big company that everybody's heard of in that space. It was a little small company called CryptoCard, which is now defunct. But they opened up a small office in the UK, and every year they used to ship me on over to man the booth, to be a booth bunny, and give lectures on the technology. And it was quite cool because it was the only platform solution at the time which provided a Mac two-factor authentication solution which actually worked on a Mac server. No real reason why you'd want to do that, because there was plenty of good radio server options on other platforms. But that's what I used to do. So I thought, when I saw that, 10 years. I have not spoken publicly in 10 years. You got to stand up and show what you're made of occasionally. So I look forward to seeing you all in another 10 years. Since that time, I have been working in the Mac field, and maybe slightly in a minority for this sort of group here. I've been a sort of gun for hire. I've been in a lot of small businesses trying to help them do their IT. And I know there's a few sort of small business IT consultants in here, but a lot of you guys are sort of in shop. And I was doing that with Mac consultants for the best part of 7 years until they got sold. And I really decided I didn't like the new owners. So that was a story in and of itself. And if you buy me a drink, I may avail you of some nasty little secrets. Where I am now. Okay, the big small company you may never have heard of. Well, in fact, no one will have heard of it, because I had never heard of it until I saw how much they were paying. Another drink. Okay, so it's a company of about 500 people globally. And you think, okay, well, that's a half decent size. But then you think 20 countries, geez, the numbers are kind of a bit sort of mismatched in some ways. And then you go, oh, it's privately owned. Oh, that's quite cool. Yeah. And then the sort of headline hits you, and it's like £500 million turnover last year. 500 employees. That puts £1 million of productivity in turnover on every employee's head. There's not many companies in the world that can boast that sort of productivity, really. And in fact, sort of if you do have a sort of subscription to Dun & Bradstreet, you'll find they're one of 4 or 5 in the world that are given the very top rating because of that reason. Now, what they actually do is they help retailers come up with schemes and products for rewarding customer loyalty. So they are in the production business of maybe, for instance, coming up with a set of Gordon Ramsay pans. Okay, now you've got to spend a certain amount in a certain department within a shop to get your coupon, be it paper coupon, electronic coupon, and then you just got to try and spend a little bit more, and then you're going to get enough coupons and you're going to get some pans, and they're going to be Gordon Ramsay pans, and they're going to be good. Okay, so the company TCC Global, they go through the whole licensing, manufacturing, engagement with the retailers, the coming up with a whole scheme of working out customer analytics and selling that scheme to the retailer, be it Tesco's, be it sort of Marks and Spencer's, be it anyone and any retailer globally. And that's what they've been doing for many years. And apparently it is a license to print money. There you go. So that's where I am at the moment. Okay, so their current Apple picture. Okay, we've got in London, which is the headquarters. They have about 30 Macs and another 50 or so globally. I don't really know, because there's no way anyone can tell me what they've really got. About 70% of the leadership team are, well, they're based all over the world. In fact, the leadership team, a lot of them are out in Holland. I very rarely get to see them. They turn up with their expensive suits. And they say hi, and they've got a problem with a charging jack on their iPhone. I'm the Mac guy. So we've got about 400 mobile devices, 80%, I would say. iDevices. Again, I'd love to be able to tell you an exact number because they've got no current solution for globally managing it. You might see a picture or a trend coming on here. Okay, it's a very traditional IT outlook. AD binding, global MPLS between about 80% of the sites. I'd love to say I'm in there at director level, but I'm not. I am having to work from the ground up, and I will tell you that I'm the first hire in the company who has even sort of seen a Mac really from a technical perspective. Previously, they've employed external consultants to maybe come in maybe once a month, look after people's Macs. You know, the Mac users sit in the corner. I don't complain too much. They get on with what they're doing. It's a testament to the sort of robustness of the platform, really, if we're honest. A large part of the creative storage is all siloed separately on some promise RAIDs and some X-serves with another one sitting there ready to be used in case the first one dies. Don't get me wrong, it's not you. That's what's making me sweat up here. Yeah, you get it. So the sort of bit that sort of the only reason that I really took the job, in honesty, was talking to the guys about the potential project that they were coming up with. And that's not to say I would be given carte blanche to run ahead with whatever I wanted. I'm just a small bit part in this. We've got, as a company, a global systems architect who's based out of Germany. We've got a CEO who was, until recently, the CEO of Marks and Spencer's. You know, we've got some big hitters, and I am just this one little person who happens to know Macs. Okay, so when I'm not working on this, I'm fixing people's, well, printer cartridges, you know, reinstalling their Mac drives on their PCs. It's not like I've got a grandiose position in here, but they can see the writing on the wall in some respects. Hence, the project was called Management of Internet-Based Workstations, brackets Mac, okay? Because they're kind of thinking that maybe they're spending a shitload of money on a global MPLS sort of infrastructure, and they might want to start thinking about, you know, IT in the 21st century. I don't know. So we have got, for instance, offices that are starting to spring up in Russia, in China. I've got one in February in Dallas, and they're all off the MPLS. Well, that's cool, you know, because we're looking at cloud services, and we're a bona fide, sort of all paid up 365 customer, which is cool. It kind of works now. It's pretty good. Until you have an issue and can't get any sort of technical support. We had 5 or 6 Exchange servers, which we've now basically transitioned out. I wasn't involved in that, thank God. You couldn't pay me enough to do that sort of work. So they do understand that they're working their way to removing infrastructure from within the business. And a lot of offices are now kind of very almost infrastructure free. Their server rooms are not full of gear anymore. They realized that they needed to do some form of Mac administration because they didn't know what they had. They don't know what they're spending. They had a nasty habit of just letting employees walk off with their equipment as they left. And that was seen as literally a perk of working at TCC, is you get to take your stuff home. Now, I've got some other great stories on that from some previous employers about walking out with equipment under their arm as well. Again, another drink. Okay, and what they're looking for is, in the longer run, the ability to manage cross-platform as well. And it was very much a part of my mind and my thinking in this, that even if they didn't realize what they needed, I could see what they needed. They're sitting there working on their PCs day in, day out. You know, you don't always appreciate it until you have to work with these kind of guys. And it's all very well us sitting there thinking, you know, I know what's cool in the Mac world, and I'm doing my thin provisioning, and I'm layering my stuff on, and they're just like, no, give this big fat fucking wedge of an image, and I'm going to cram it into this PC, and then I'm going to see if I can make some drivers work. And it used to drive me potty, and I've always been telling them that there's a better way of doing this. And incidentally, when I walk in, that's what they do with the Mac as well. And they paid some consultants out of Germany a huge amount of money to come up with one image, which they were then trying to fit onto new hardware. Okay? They were wondering why Office crashed 5 times a day. And I'm finding weird and wonderful files here, there, and everywhere in the system. I'm like, what's going on, guys? Okay, so they have given me some freedom to provide them a better solution. And they're looking potentially at MDM. Again, slightly blinkered, but you have to choose your battles, and you have to work in a way which you're not going to get tossed out in your ear, because you're a square peg in a round hole. So if I was to say that MDM, as we know, and what we're talking about here, zero touch deployment, fucking awesome. But I know that the company next month is going to spend more on sending me to Dallas for 3 days to set up 4 MacBooks and train some people than they would on their MDM solution, which would have done it, meaning I could sit at my desk. But you can't just go and say, you're wasting money, you're stupid. I've tried that in the past. I've got older, I've got wiser at this. So you do need to, so I'm going to let them spend that money. And you know what, I'm going to enjoy running around Dallas, because I'm hating running around outside at the moment. It's not much fun. Our solution, big groans or big joyful cheers? I don't know. I mean, sometimes it, sometimes it feels that it can be a little bit of a Casper Appreciation Society around these parts. I don't mind being that little bit counterculture. In part of making the choice, and in fact, I said to the management team, if I was being brutally honest and very vain about this, I would love you to buy Casper, because I think possibly it could help me earn a little bit more when I go to my next job. However, in my heart of hearts, I could see that really the company needed something that in passing did a half decent job at being cross-platform. Additionally, I knew that potentially the process of taking Casper on board, and when we started looking at the figures up front, and everybody's sort of seen the onboarding process and stuff like that, it was going to cause a little bit of political friction in that. So I was wary of that. It wasn't a deciding factor. I have to say that everybody has off days, and I'm sitting there with my global architect in an office in the middle of Germany, because of course we can't make these decisions cheaply with me at my desk. I have to get flown out to Dusseldorf and then driven for 2.5 hours into the mid-German countryside to make this decision. The plus point was that at the hotel bar that evening, only Nicolas Cage comes in. I shit you not. Cherry schnapps he wanted. Getting back on track slightly. Unfortunately, I do think that the Casper demo to us, it was a remote demo, but did not go down well. And that was quite a factor, and it's always something that you've got to take and be mindful of, is that presentation and those sort of, especially to the people above you, that the perceptions matter. Doesn't matter what you think as a technical solution is maybe superior. You are swimming against the tide, my friend, if you think that a bad demo is going to get you in the door. It will not. Yours was shit as well. No. No. FileWave also, it was literally a kind of back-to-back remote demo sessions, so the management team could keep it fresh and in their minds. They liked what they saw. They liked my feedback on both demos. And at that point, they kind of said, you know, we think we would like you to move ahead with FileWave to a pilot situation. And that's currently where we are. I have put FileWave in, which was a very easy drop-in. Okay, they provide it as a virtual application. And how many minutes am I going over here? Massively. It's a drop-in VM. You know, I can get it up and running on our infrastructure in sort of 2 hours, and I can start testing. And now I've got sort of, at the moment, sort of 10 machines all around the world in sort of pilot on this product. And yeah, this is not a sales pitch, by the way, in any way, shape, or form. Now, this is about as good as FileWave makes their documentation, if I was going to kick them in the nuts after building them up. But it's kind of functional and reasonably easy to understand. It's nice in that I've got no sort of working out cost implications of putting together the global infrastructure. The booster, as they call it, or local caching nodes are license free. I can put them in as many situations as works for us. It's a reasonably simple solution, and one that rolls out pretty quickly. In terms of the product fundamentals, we've got obvious for clients, and we have this thing called file sets. And I'll get on to breaking down the terminology a little bit more in a future slide, but we've got the glue then in the middle, which is this association. They call it associations in FileWave. And those can be direct or dynamic. And we'll get on and we can have a look at that in a little bit more detail as we require later. Okay, the clients are agent-based, and as we've said, they're cross-platform. You know, there's not going to be a platform out there that we can't manage with it. It's fine. File sets. There are, one of the preconceptions that I found with FileWave is that, you know, it has to work in its particular way. And actually, in use of the product, take it for a spin. I've found it actually is quite intuitive and quite easy to work with. The file sets that it sort of offers up are apps and folders. And basically, that's like the screen on the right. In there, that I've got a script, a Python script, which basically every time the user logs in is going to choose one of the desktop backgrounds at random. Branding. Sorry? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more, but you choose your battles. The great thing that maybe isn't apparent, that actually just working with packages and scripts as you would normally with maybe Monkey or something like that, just drag and drop. It just works. Okay, you drop it into the work pane, it appears as an option to be installed on a machine. There's nothing more complicated, nothing stepping outside the GUI in that. And to slightly backtrack, I had looked at the potential for putting in something along the lines of Monkey and a GUI to go along with that. And the real problem with that is that I want to be able to share this technology with my PC using brethren. And in all honesty, they feel much more comfortable when there's a support chain which goes very clinically, very easily outside of me, which I don't blame them about. Profiles, again, it's just a single sort of click on there, provide it the profile. It's got the GUI builder for your profile, which is quite nice, and you can import and export out, so you can sort of tailor the profile sort of parameters down to the granular degree if you want. It's just easy. And what we'll notice down here all the way over, a long way. But down here, we've got, under the verification pane there, it says self-healing there. Now, it's got a couple of options on the sort of file set awareness so that it can check files that have been deployed, whether they're still there, whether they're missing, whether they've been updated. So you've actually got options based around of, do you want an initial deployment and then the user can go and do what the hell they want with their machine? Or are you going to hold it actually to a known standard of what you want and they can't change it because upon the next verification run, it's just going to put it all back to how it was. So you've got the flexibility there depending on what your environment requires. The associations are the sort of the glue, and that's basically just joining our client to the file set. They go directly, or they can be based on groups, you know, so you've got one to many, many to one, not a problem. We also have, as I have to explain it to every PC using sort of admin in the company, smart groups. Have you used iTunes? Do you have smart groups for your music? It's the only way that people get that, okay? And that it's a dynamically created list of machines based on a search criteria, essentially. And we can do that on pretty much anything within here. We can also, it's very good at tying into your external LDAP system, Active Directory in most cases. We can do it based on security groups or OUs. So when the techs move a machine around the offices into the OU, sorry, am I going way over? All right, cool. Yeah, all right. Let's not do that then. In the time that I've been working with it, it's been great. It's hit all of the bits that I need it to do. Now, I will proviso that we're not doing a massive amount with it because it's a slowly catching monkey situation with me. You know, I've got to, in the first instance, approximate what they were doing with their hammer and chisel and their monolithic imaging. And I have to slowly sort of bring that into being a slightly more modern sort of layered approach, as everybody talks about these days. I'll pop the details of these links up, but like yourself, it was a login screen background. Gets a little bit tricky. Once you find the information out, it's quite simple to do. The other thing that is invaluable is Outset, and if people aren't using that on their machines or machines they're looking after, I would suggest take a look because it's the easiest way of then launching stuff at either boot or user login. That wonderful thing, which is AD machine certs for wireless authentication. When you get it working, it's a wondrous thing. So the Mac actually works like their PCs and it works as they expect it. When you boot it up, it's on wireless. I can log into a user account which has never seen that Mac before. My God. It took me some head scratching and some working out and a little bit of alchemy, not least because the infrastructure was put together by an external consultant 3 years ago. So you just have to unpick, but that AFP 548 document there actually sort of lays out, if you've got the basics down of your machine getting the cert, awesome. But then you've got to make it work at the login window. And once you do that, your users are never going to be pestered for what identity they're connecting under. And like I say, you don't need, when you're installing or moving users around, for it to be wired. And in this day and age, who isn't? So, and with that, I think that's about it. If my family has anything to do with it, I'll tell you. So thank you very much for your time and patience.
Very much, James.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for that, James. Next up, we have Neil, who's lapelling up. So intern music instead, I guess.
Not we need, not just we or something.
It's another reference that people aren't doing.
1, 2, 1, 2. Ooh, I can hear myself. Fantastic. Good evening, everyone. You're comfy and full up with your lovely pizza food. Isn't it good? So I'm going to talk about this thing today. Just a quick show of hands. Who deploys Microsoft Office here? Quite a few. That's good. Who hates it? Ooh. Who hates deploying it? That's quite good to deploy. Yeah. So thanks to one guy who I'll mention as well, who's been really active in the community, who some of you may know, some of you may not have heard of him. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about this thing called Mal. But before I do, I'll introduce myself. I'm Neil. I work at the University of East London and I manage about 450 Macs. And you might know me as Neil Martin 83 on the Slack. And if you're in there in the mornings, you'll see me posting pictures of him saying, "Good morning." What a guy. So Mal, yeah. What's Mal? Not Chairman Mal. Some people pronounce it meow. No, it's neither of those. It's this thing, Microsoft Auto Update. So you've probably seen it, even if you've used Office on your own Mac at home. If you don't deploy it, when you go to the Help menu and click Check for Updates, that thing launches. It's Microsoft's tool that updates all of the Office apps. It looks after all of them. I say all of them except for OneDrive. That's not included, unfortunately. OneDrive, incidentally, has now switched to a standalone package installer. Is anyone deploying that? Yeah, I'm scared of deploying it because we deploy the Mac App Store version and it nukes all the preferences and everything for the user, so they have to set it up again when we push it out. Uses a different preference domain. So watch out for that. And then it installs an updating daemon all of its own that keeps itself up to date when Microsoft release new versions of it. But that's not part of Mal. So yeah, Microsoft Auto Update, really cool. And we're starting to adopt Microsoft Auto Update at UEL for our staff Macs, because of staff users, really. I'll say the struggle is very real indeed. As you all know, deploying updates to users or getting users to update their machines is really, really hard. At the moment, we offer the latest version of Microsoft Office through Jamf self-service. But it's a little bit like this. When we try and say, here's your updates, they don't bother. It's really hard to push updates out automatically as well, because you never know if they're going to be using the machine, especially with the laptop deployments that we do. They're file vault encrypted, so they're always using the machine when it's switched on. There's never an opportunity when it sits at the login window for us to kind of silently do things in the background. Really annoying. So Mal helps us out there, and you can see we do offer the latest version of Microsoft Office, but not very many of our users update. Well, that version's about a year old now. So there we go. 15.19, yeah. So yeah, one interesting thing about Microsoft Auto Update, or Mal, is in a recent release from Microsoft, the 3.8 release, they added this option, which is really neat. This option, if you select it, lets the Office apps silently download and install the applications in the background. And it's triggered when you run the application. You start Word, Mal runs in the background and checks against all the applications that are registered with it, downloads and installs updates for all of them, nags the user if they've got an application open that it wants to update in a really graceful way. Says you can update now and it will restart the app gracefully, or you can update later. And then it will update the app as soon as the user quits the app without telling them, which is quite good. If the user tries to start an app that's updating, they get a nice little dialogue saying, no, you don't, we're updating this app at the moment, please wait. And hopefully my demo will work. Yeah, and we'll see what happens. The other cool thing about this is you don't have to be an admin on the machine to run it. Any user can do it. So again, that's a recent change. With the exception of when Microsoft release a new version of Mal and it wants to update itself, then you need to be an admin. one to watch out for there. So you still have to do a little bit of work in your management systems to deploy the client itself. The other good thing about Mal is that you can set up a caching server. You can host the updates yourself and the collateral. And they're two different things. The collateral is essentially the data that Mal pulls down to say, to see which updates are available on your server. And then you've got the packages themselves, which you can download from your server or download from Microsoft CDN. So if you're really stingy with your bandwidth, you can just host the collateral and let Mal pull down the packages from Microsoft CDN, or host everything on your own web server. And yes, you just need a web server for that. And you can control the release of updates. Microsoft provides some tools to let you download the updates that you want to host on your caching server, or Malcache, as we'll call it. So that's Mal. It's not for everyone. I don't know if you can read that through here. Yep. So, for example, Tim does point out things like this. They're talking about another vendor's auto updater. Starts with A, ends with Adobe. Then one's Rum. But the only good thing about it is the name, isn't it? The drinking name. So yeah, be aware it is a closed source daemon doing what it likes on your system, running with elevated privileges. You may not want that. So, and there's an interesting thing that happened with Adobe's auto updates. Adobe did release an update that started deleting files from the user's home area. If you had Backblaze installed to manage your backups, it spotted it. And then people on Twitter started complaining about Adobe, but they like Backblaze. You can read more about that story here, because Backblaze were very vocal about it, because people thought it was a bug with Backblaze and it wasn't. So, what do you need to deploy Mal? You need the client. It comes installed with the Office apps. If you install the full suite installer, you get Mal. If you install the standalone packages, they each come with Mal as well. And it also comes with its own installer as well that you can download. You can manage its preferences. Its preference domain is that. And you can manage it with a profile. If you want to be really, really evil and lock the settings down, grey them out so no one can change them. Or you can manage them in /library preferences or the user's library. So it's up to you. And the other part of Mal, if you want to use it, is your caching server, which I spoke about before. And the tools are hosted on this site here. I'll talk about Paul in a second. So, some sort of extra reading for you, really, because I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to set up Mal and what the keys are and everything else, all the bits you manage. If you go to macadmins.software, fantastic site, they've got all the documentation there about how you set up Mal, how you manage it, and also how you set the caching server up, and a whole load of other stuff about Office as well, all technical stuff that we're interested in when we deploy it. It's really good. And if you're not in the Microsoft Office channel on Slack, jump in there. And there is one particular guy I have to give a special mention to, Mr. Paul Bowden. That's his name, not Bowden. So Paul Bowden. He's pretty legendary. He's lead software engineer for Microsoft, who has joined the MacAdmin Slack community and contributes massively in the Office channel. I say, have any of you spoken to him or seen what he does in here? Brilliant guy. I'll give him a round of applause. He may actually be watching this now as well, because I told him that we'd be presenting tonight. But I'm not sure, I haven't checked yet. So don't just take my word for it. As we say, he gets a lot of good feedback. And he's also got other people from Microsoft into the Slack as well. There's a whole team of them. And they've got an A-team page on the MacAdmins .software site, so you can see who they all are, and they all manage different parts of Office. Yep, and they are really nice, really helpful. So yeah, he's awesome. Again, massive kudos to Paul Bowden and the entire team. Lots of thanks. I mean, these messages are just strewn throughout the channel. My personal favourite is that one. I like that. So, and there's a really lovely backstory if you read William Meck's or Talking Moose's blog there, because William has been kind of a bit of a pillar of the community when it comes to Microsoft Office over the years, and the Mac. But he's not a developer for Microsoft or anything like that. He's just got his head way into it. He writes the auto setup scripts for Outlook, if you've ever used those. But he talks about how this all began and how Paul then came and joined the community there. Really good read. So I set up Mal. Anyone here practice ITIL in their organizations, change management specifically? So my change request to deploy and provision Mal to our staff Macs was approved this afternoon. Whee! If anyone has to go through ITIL change management process, well, that's an achievement in itself. But it did force me to write up really good documentation. It is good stuff. So yeah, some things I came up against when I deployed Mal that I didn't find in the documentation, but if you deploy it, you may come up against the same things. When you set your web server up, unbeknownst to me, I was trying to download the packages and I was getting 404s because I hadn't set up my MIME types on the server. The web server didn't know what to do when you request a .pkg or a .mpkg, which the older Office 2011 updates come as. So you have to add your MIME types to your web server. I don't know if that's the same for Apache and Linux, but we use IIS on Windows. So watch out for that one. That's only if you're hosting the updates yourself. If you deploy Mal with the management system and it deploys at the login window, or another user installs it on the Mac, so the user that actually wants to use it didn't double click the package and do the install, the first time they launch an application that triggers Mal to run, you'll see this. You can script your way out of that as well, just by registering Mal with launch services. And there's a couple of commands there to do it. I wrote a little script that works as a Jamf Pro login policy, which just puts su $3-C to run those commands as the current user that's logging in. That works. Yeah, it's just bash. But if you use a tool like Outset, you can run them as is, because they run in the context of the current logged in user anyway. So that's cool. And that will get rid of that. The other thing is, if the current logged in user didn't install Office, what will happen is Mal won't be aware of the Office applications. The first time you run an Office application, say Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it registers itself with Mal. Or when you run the installer, they all get registered with Mal for that current user. Fortunately, you can just manage the keys for those applications, and they are managed in the same preference domain as part of Mal's settings. So again, another one to watch out for, because all that will happen is when a user launches Word and no other apps are registered with Mal, Mal will only update Word. And then 12 hours later, when it checks again, and you launch another application, Mal will then be aware of Word and the next application, and so on. So it can take a long time to get all the apps recognized. If the user never uses a particular application on the Mac, it will stay at the version that you deployed. So yeah, get those pre-registered. You can stick them in a configuration profile. And I also know that you can put applications in there that you haven't got installed. So some of you may deploy just the individual installers for the app. So you may just deploy everything except Outlook, for example, or use the installer choices when you deploy, that kind of thing. It doesn't matter if you put Outlook in there. Mal will ignore it if it's not actually on the Mac in the applications folder, so it's fine to do it. And again, another little tip there, if you look in the installer package for the Office suite with a tool like Suspicious Package, look at the post-install scripts. There's some nice bash in there that creates these keys. You can just pinch it if you want to create them that way. Or you can sit on a Mac, run all the apps, and then grab the P list. Up to you. So how do I know that this stuff, if you put apps in there, Mal will ignore them if they're not on the machine? Because Paul said so. I asked him. So brilliant. And also, we know that the Mal client doesn't like to update itself. It will prompt for admin credentials when it tries to. That can be a stumbling block. So we manage our Macs with Jamf Pro. So I had to write a couple of extension attributes to look for the presence of Mal, whether it's installed, returns a result, no it isn't, or yes it is if that's present, because it's not in the applications folder, it's somewhere else. And also, just to read the CF bundle version string from Mal as well. So then you can create smart groups that look for Mal and also determine what version is installed on your Mac, so you can put new versions out. So that's quite nice. They're just on my gist, because I haven't got a proper GitHub at the moment. Keep meaning to get around to it. Yep. And really, that's really it about Mal, apart from a little demo I've got planned. Who wants to see a demo, a live demo? I'm tempting fate. How many goats did we sacrifice tonight? Not enough. Ooh. First of all, I've got to switch apps. Best demo ever. So this only shows the window for the app I'm sharing, by the way. I'm doing stuff. Yeah. Oh, look, it's my other Mac. There we go. So, I'll say here's one I made earlier. I am going to just remotely connect to our production Mal cache. So hopefully we can see what goes on there to prove it's real. Will it work? Yes. Well, I just clicked OK to that computer misuse warning. This isn't misuse, is it? Depends how you look at it. Off that goes. So on this VM, I've got Office installed, I've got the latest Mal installed, and I've got a little profile I created just to manage its settings. I'm going to install that profile now. When it lets me. Come on. I'll start this up as well so we can see network activity there. So this is what our server's doing at the moment. This is the profile. What I'm interested in are the keys. If you can see them in the distance there, these two, so manifest server and update cache, and I'm just pointing them at our server there. If you manage these keys for Mal, if you set them, Mal will not try and check another server or Microsoft's ones if it doesn't find yours. It will just report that there's no available updates as well. Yep. So this isn't great for roaming users, but it's okay within the environment you're in. Well, our server's in the DMZ, so it's fine. And it works over HTTPS as well. If you've got a good certificate, it's great, fantastic. So that's managed now. Here I've got auto-update.log, which is in there, just showing what Mal's doing, so you can keep an eye on it, which is quite good. There's a preference key you can manage to enable verbose extended logging as well to really get the details. So I'm just going to pretend to be a user. I'm going to launch Word, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully I'm looking for some activity on my server when Word launches. A bit slow being a VM. Looking over there, will it work? Oh, look, the spike. Some downloading going on there. That's brilliant. So something's talking to the server. It must be this. And so you can be working away in Word, doing whatever you want. It's really slow. Oh, look, some stuff going on in the log there. It's done Excel first. Silently installing. So it's going to let me create a document. Yeah, it does. Oh, what's this? Word wants to update. I'll let it do it. Let's click restart the app. Ask me to save. I won't save. What I will do though is I'll try and launch Word again. See what happens when I'm launching an app that's trying to install. Will it warn me or will it break? Oh, brilliant. And because I've done this, I should get a progress bar when the update for Word happens. But I won't see that for the other apps because I haven't launched them yet. Oh, and there it is. Doesn't tell you how long it's going to take, but it is pretty quick. What shuts down while it's installing the package?
No, before it's downloading. In the time when it's downloading, so he quits it, says, I'll run to the tube. Then he's at home with no internet, his Word is not working, or it's just, it's stupid, but it's a case that can happen.
I don't know.
No.
But I think it's fairly robust. So if it hasn't downloaded the full package, then it won't install it. Yeah, I don't know if it resumes downloads halfway done, or if it just tries again.
Okay, no,
it's web server based, so it could, yeah.
Start with the update with the download, or if it downloads first.
No, it downloads first. What it installs is an installer package. And interestingly, the way Mal does it, it actually, if you're running the previous release to the one that's being updated to, so 1529 to 1530, for example, you'll get Delta packages. So they're smaller. And they install pretty quick as well. If you're going from an earlier version than that, say 2 or 3 releases behind to the current, it's a bit slower because it downloads a full installer per app. So it doesn't download one big installer for the whole lot. It does one app at a time as well. So, but we've been testing it. It's been working pretty well.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Really, very good.
So the real test will come on Monday when we switch this on for all our users that are running to 1519. We'll see what happens to them. So yeah, demo actually worked. Brilliant.
Sorry, did you say that you can manage the user's preferences on the machine?
Yes, so I should show you that because I installed the profile. If I try and run Mal myself, I'm managing all those things. I can't change them, they're all grey. I can't switch the insider channels, things like that. You've got really fine-grained control over what you can manage. It's all in the Microsoft documentation for it. So you can sort of grey out some things, leave other things up to the user.
Do you know if it's stable running embedded scripts in Office Box?
Not with Mal. So no, that just updates the apps. But do ask in the Microsoft Office channel. There's good stuff in there. So I'm just going to quit this. Oh, it does. Oh, brilliant. So we go, yeah, so Dan just said Mal will resume broken downloads as well. I've just shut down my VM, waiting for it to give me the Mac back. The most important slide of the evening, the one you've all been waiting for. To the pub. Applaud the slide. Fantastic. Darren, did you put the GIF in there? Ah, it's his. So we've been recommended by our wonderful host, Sachin, to go to the Viaduct Tavern round about now. So thanks again to Sachin for hosting us. It was over there. Brilliant. It's a fantastic venue and really lovely food. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you all for coming along and taking an evening out to. That's right. Well, thank you for having each other. Oh.